everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another helpful beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and notification bell and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today what I'm going to be showing you is another fun variation of the wrap bracelets. So if you recall from previous videos, there were two other wrap bracelets with the leather that I've done videos on. We had sort of the pretty simple one that showcased our 4mm check fire polish mixes, and then I did another one that showcased some seed beads as well as the fun check two-hole beads like super duos and and the tiles, and then some cool button beads. So this is going to be another fun type of wrap bracelet for you to see. This one is going to be a little bit more involved. What I'm going to be utilizing today are a color palette that we made using the Toho Aiko beads, and we're also going to have a really fun flat peyote accent bead as well, but that's going to be a little later in the video. So first I'm going to show you how to get the bracelet started. So to give you a close-up of what I have here, I have some colors of Toho Aikos, and we have together these beautifully coordinated mixes up on the website of Toho Aikos. This is the mix that I made called Sand Dune, and it's a lovely mix of sort of blues and bronzy golds and browns, and really pretty. And then I have a tiara cast button, of course, because I just love using them. And then I have a 1mm piece, sized piece of leather cord, and it's in sort of like a nice dark bronzy gold color. So we're going to start by sliding this through our button here. Make your two ends meet just like that. We're going to slide this to the end. And as far as how much you need, figure you want there to be enough for you to go around your wrist, plus a little extra because it's going to be a little bit wider. And we also want to have some cord at the end, so we can do just like we did here, and we can have several knots so that way it can be adjustable. So better to overestimate than underestimate. And you can also make this as long as you'd like. If you want it to wrap around your wrist 3 or 4 times, you can just make this extra long. But I'm just going to do one that goes around about once. So now that I have my button on there, I'm going to tie this in a knot and get that knot nice and close to that button. I'm just going to shift it up there. And if it's not exactly up close or an exactly perfect looking knot, that's okay. That's sort of the beauty of this sort of technique. It has that sort of more organic feel to it. So, my knot doesn't look perfect, but that's all right. Again, I don't really mind in this sort of a project. And the rest of the work on the bracelet is going to be much more precise, so it'll actually be sort of a nice contrast. It's one of the reasons why I love all of the bracelets that they're doing with the leather cord nowadays, because they're really using some beautiful contrasting pieces like crystal with the leather, or these beautiful, very precise seed beads with the leather, and it's just such a nice contrast. So now what I'm going to do is take a piece of fire line. So this is 6-pound fire line. I've threaded it onto a size 12 needle. A size 10 needle would work fine too. I'm a size 12 kind of a girl, and I've pulled a tail and I've waxed it. And the reason that I like waxing for this particular project is because I'm hoping that this amount of fire line will take me through the whole thing. We'll see, won't we? But it allows me to pull a nice long tail, and then the tail will stick to the rest of the working thread, and this allows me to work with a longer piece of fire line. So I'm going to start by taking the very end of the fire line, and I'm going to tie it right here, right up at that knot, as close as I can get it. And as you're making the knot, if it's not super close, that's fine. You can slide it up a bit once you have it tied on. And you're just going to do a nice square knot. So if you're not familiar with a square knot, it's like a double knot, but the second knot's backwards. So it's right over left and then left over right. And I'm leaving a tail on this fire line that's long enough that I can actually weave it in later, because I don't want to rely on just that knot to hold this all together. So later on what I'll do is this tail will get a needle on it, and I'll just weave it through some of the beads so that way it can be a little extra secure and I'm not cutting it off right at the knot. So my fire line is a little bit further away, but that's all right because I can just slide it right up and that's no big deal. Just like that. So now it's nice and up close. All right, so now the rest of the technique for this part of the video is going to be very similar to a loom bracelet, which is where we're going to be going over and under with what's essentially our weft thread. And the two cords here are like our warp thread. So I'm going to start, oops, I'm going to get caught. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by picking up some Aikos, and you can sort of play with your own pattern here. We're going to have row after row after row of the Aikos, and you can make this also as wide as you'd like. I'm probably going to do about maybe 4 beads wide. And you can play with the pattern. You can do solid rows. You can do rows that have, you know, random other colors speckled in. It's totally your call. I'm probably just going to go a little nuts and just kind of wing it. So this first row, I'll just pick up a solid color to get started. So I'm going to slide my Aikos down. You can use delicas for this as well. We're just really wanting to show off the beautiful new Aiko mixes that we have, because this really works out perfectly for them. You get 5 coordinated colors that I've put together, and they just sort of will one shot, and you have a beautiful project no matter what you make with it. Ooh, you know, actually I'm going to start with 2 because I'm going to graduate up to 4. So let me take off those last 2 there. I meant to pick up just the 2 to start with. All right, so right now my weft thread, which is my fire line, is going underneath the warp threads, which is my leather. Let me bring this nice and close for you so you can see. Just like that. So my fire line is actually underneath the 2 pieces of leather. And now my needle is going to go back through those Aikos, but with the leather behind it. So now my needle, and therefore my thread, is going to be in front of the warp threads, or my leather. And I'm just going to hold it right in place with my fingers. And we've now secured our beads in place here. And now the same thing is going to happen. I have my fire line behind my pieces of leather. I'm going to pick up another 2 beads. Then I'll move to 3 beads, and then I'll be at my 4. I'm going to move my 2 beads down. Get that little tail out of the way. Once you've gotten maybe an inch of beadwork or so, you can go ahead and weave that tail in if it gets too annoying. Okay, now we're going to go back through those 2 Aikos, but now we're in front of the leather. And again, I just kind of pinch it between my fingertips to keep everything in place. Give it a nice tug. And you can see how they start to sit in line nicely. And even that first row now is a little bit more straightened up. So again, I'm going behind the leather. I'll pick up maybe 3 beads now. Maybe I'll start in with another color. I'll do a row of this next sort of irisy brown color. Bring this all the way down. And remember, my weft thread, or my fire line here, is behind the leather currently. And now I'm going to go back through those Aikos, only now I'm in front. And again, before I pull my needle all the way through, I like to pinch it with my fingertips. That way nothing moves as I pull everything through. And if you have to gently nudge the beads up a little bit, that's fine. Just like we had nudged that knot up at the beginning, we can nudge the beads up a little bit too. So that's what we got here. All right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to work up a little bit more of this, and I will have you guys join me back in a minute when we're ready to talk about our next fun little part, which is the peyote beaded bead. See you in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I have so far, which is this. And all I did was I just kind of picked little random patterns to do. So I have some that are little just solid lines. I have some where I did little diagonal stripes running through them. You can have fun with it. And you can also plan it out on a piece of graph paper if you don't want to just kind of wing it like I did. But what I've done here though is I did taper back down to a few rows of 3 beads and then some rows of 2 beads. So this way we can add our next element, which is what I'm going to show you how to make now. So This is what it looks like almost finished, but I'm going to show you how we start it, and then we'll bounce back to this one to finish it up. So if you've never done flat peyote before, that's all this is. So for those who have done flat peyote before, this is just even count flat peyote. It's 10 beads across, and it's 10 beads up the side if you want to count up that way, or it's 20 rows total up. All I did was just kind of a nice little color shift with those same 5 colors of the Toho Aikos. And for those who don't know how to do this, I'm going to show you how you get this started. So I have a nice short little piece of fireline here just because I'm just doing this as a sample. So I'm going to pick up my 10 delicas here. And it is important to have an even number for this. It is even count flat peyote. So you always want to double check. Yep, that's 10. I'm going to bring it to within a few inches of the end of my thread. And we just have that nice little line of seed beads right there. So the way that we start the peyote is we pick up a new bead, which is going to start the next row. We skip over the last bead that we picked up, and we go in and out of the bead before it, just like that. And when you pull this through, the bead that we just picked up will sit on top of the bead that we skipped over, which was the bead at the end, which was the 10th bead that we had picked up. And so now we're going to do that again. We're going to pick up a new bead. We're going to skip over the next bead and go into the bead after that. So another way to look at it is if your thread is exiting out of bead A, you're skipping over bead B and going into bead C. That one just like that. Okay, and you pull this through. Oops. And again, the bead we picked up will sit on top of the bead that we skipped over. Let's get a better shot there. Just like that. There we go. And so you just continue down the row of beads, pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through. That's sort of the little mantra you want to say in your head. Pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through. And I did at one point drop a bead off of here because I have one less. I did. I must have lost. Oh, here it is right at the end. Let me get that back up there. For the very last bead that we're adding, pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through. So in this case, the bead that we're going through is the bead at the very, very end. Give it a nice little tug, and you'll see that this is the start of our peyote, just like that. And then to start the next row, I like to just pinch it between my fingertips, and I like to always turn my work so my needle's always pointing away from me. We'll pick up another color for this row, pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through. And in this case, it's so much easier because you're just going through all the popped up beads, or up beads as they're sometimes called. Let me show you again. Just like that. Okay, you can see where my thread's exiting. You can see I've picked up a bead and I've gone into the next up bead. After that first row of peyote, it makes it a lot easier to know where you're going. And we do have another video on how to do peyote as well, but it's pretty much the same info you're going to get right here, so it's probably not too necessary to go watch it, but you certainly can. So then that is the next row down. So basically all you do is you keep working up your rows in whatever pattern you like. You could do a solid color. You could just mix some of your beads together and just pick up a random mix. Or you could work out a pattern. They do have peyote graph paper, which is different than regular graph paper because it's not a perfect grid. It has the actual, the little empty cells are staggered just like peyote is. And if you could just go to Google and just type in free peyote graph paper, you'll find printables, and you can always play with some colored pencils and come up with a cute little pattern. So this is what it creates. And this whole thing, which is going to now get sewn into a tube, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This took about 1.5 feet of fire line. So the neat thing about peyote is it can zipper together by zigzagging through all of those up beads, the up beads on the row I just finished and the up beads at the beginning. Now, if you find that your up beads and lower beads don't match up, it means you have to go back across one more time to create the alternating beads that you need to do this. So basically what you want to see is, if you look here, I have a little lowered space right at the end here, and then I have an up bead down here. That is where it's going to fit into. And the same thing down here. I have a little empty space right in that corner, and I have an up bead right here in this corner that's going to fit into it. And if you see you have two empty spaces opposite each other like that, it means you have to do one more row. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the up bead on the opposite side as the side my thread is coming out of. And then I'm going to go back and go through the next up bead back on the first side. And don't worry about pulling it all super tight. You can do that once you've gone all the way through. And you're just going to keep going back and forth diagonally through your up beads. And I'll give you a nice good close-up where you can see the thread path as well to give you another idea of what it should look like. You can even go through both of the up beads sometimes at the same time, but okay, almost done. Just this up bead, and now the up bead back at the very beginning. Okay, let me see if I can show you that thread path before I pull it tight. Let's see if we can get a nice good view. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but anyways, it becomes seamless. Nice and seamless. And then I'm going to give it a nice good pull. And we have a completely solid tube that is completely seamless. And what I did was I did sort of a light to dark, or rather a brown to turquoise color shift for my tube. So that way as it turns on the bracelet, it'll kind of keep shifting colors, which I really, really like. So now to finish this up, all I have to do is weave out this thread. So I'm going to weave through some of the beads, and I'm going to tie some half hitch knots along the way, so that way we can make sure that it's nice and secure. And you can also go back through or across the same seam that you just sewed shut as well. And I'll show you how to do a half hitch if you don't know how to do a half hitch. So all I'm going to do a half hitch knot is I'm going to dig my needle underneath a stitch of thread where my working thread is exiting my beadwork, just like that. There we go. And when you pull almost all the way through, you get a little loop of thread here, and you just go through that loop. And when you pull it down, that ties a knot into place. So now you can weave through some more beads, and then you can tie another knot, and then weave through some more beads, and then you can tie another knot. Just so that way you can make sure that this is nice and secure. Because the last thing you want to do is do all this beautiful work and then have it end up not staying together. That would be a heartbreaker for sure. And this is what I call a nice one evening project. You can definitely get this done in an evening. Just have your good lighting out, because these are pretty small beads. Nice cup of tea, feet under a warm blanket as it's starting to get a little chillier, and it's a really nice project to get done in an evening. All right, so now I'll trim that off in a minute to give you another idea of the look of this. So you can see the way I did the little color blending. And again, you just do that by working it out on some peyote graph paper, and you can have fun with some colored pencils. And what's going to happen is my two pieces of leather here are going to feed right through it, and we're going to have a cool beaded bead accent on our bracelet. How fun is that? And so before I cut away again to finish up the bracelet, so that way I can come back and show you guys how to completely end it, you're also going to feed your working thread through that loop as well, so that way we can continue the beadwork on the other side of our beaded beads. So your two pieces of leather went through it, as well as your fire line. Super fun. And then it'll as it twists. You can see that nice little color blending. All right, so I will be back in a minute and I will show you the rest of finishing up the bracelet. Okay, folks, so here is our fun finished, almost finished bracelet. You can see we have our bead in the middle that has that nice kind of color shift going on, and it kind of ends up looking pretty cool, I think. Pretty neat. So the way I finished it off, or the way we're gonna finish it off, is all I did was I tapered back down to groupings of 3 and then some groupings of 2. And I just then wove out my fire line. I tied some half-hitch knots along the way and just wove out that thread. I did the same thing on the beaded bead. I did the same thing to the tail in the beginning. Now I'm gonna take my 2 pieces of leather here, and I'm gonna tie them in a knot just to secure off that area nicely. Okay, and now we're gonna tie another knot a ways away from the knot we just did, and we want the space there to be the space perfect for this button. So we're gonna start by tying the knot, and then we can move it a little as we need to before we tighten it up completely. So we're just gonna go ahead and see if this kind of works. That actually does, that works pretty well. So now we can just sort of tighten it up against that button, and we'll know that we have a pretty good size. Just like that. And then we can remove the button, and we can even do that again to have it be adjustable on another length. Same thing, tie a knot, get that button through there. Just part way, and then tighten up this knot down against your button. There we go. We can snip off our ends here. I like to leave a little bit of a tail here just so we're not cutting off right next to the knot, because we don't want the knot to come undone. But that is our fun little leather wrap bracelet that's sort of done in a loom style. Again, I did just kind of like fun little patterns along the way. I just kind of went with it. Just like that. Give you an idea of some of the different patterns that you can do. And again, we have that nice little beaded bead in the center. That gives us that cool color gradation, but you can do whatever you'd like there. And then of course we have our fun button closure. Just like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the project. Thanks for watching. Make sure to visit us over at EurekaCrystalBeads.com for all the materials that I used in this video, and I will link them below for you as well. And hopefully you will subscribe and check back, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.